On this episode of 419 by Design, we'll be visiting the incredible Toledo Twisted Iron.
My name is Dane Tapering. I'm the owner and founder of Toledo Twisted Iron. This is my shop. This is where I do all my metalworking. I've been doing this for about over 13 years, 14, actually probably longer than that, almost 18 years. Just the way I started into this was just started in machining, a machine shop, and then went from there, worked in the factory for 12 and a half years. So when you get into metalworking like I've done, it's just about attention to detail and craftsmanship and just pushing yourself to the limit on that. At Toledo Twisted Iron, I started about 8 years ago now, and where it all started was at the Toledo Museum of Art, and I started taking blacksmithing classes there, and it just pretty much tied all my skill sets together over the years. I don't have an art degree, but my family has a pretty big art background. They're all pretty artistic in their own way, and on top of it, my family also has an engineering background. So basically, I'm half artist, half engineer, and I tied both of them together, and that's where I'm doing what I'm doing today, and working hard at it, making things happen. Yeah, starting Toledo Twisted Iron, I started calling customers and companies and just trying to figure out where to go, and it's still a battle every day. But I found that in the city of Toledo alone, though, these companies are really willing to work with smaller businesses and finding people with unique traits, and it's really kind of cool that companies in Toledo, especially big entities, they're all looking for that local, unique, cool stuff. So that's pretty cool. All right, today I'm going to be teaching you how to create a leaf hook. There's techniques in the leaf hook that show the basics of blacksmithing, and a lot of blacksmiths, when they go to teach somebody, this is the first thing they teach you in order to show you the different techniques and standard techniques of what blacksmiths use to forge the metal. So the start of the leaf hook is going to be tapering, and we're going to taper the hook to a point, and then we're going to put a notch in it. And then what the other part is then we're going to draw out from that notch, and we're going to create like a stem, or like the stem of the leaf. And then when that's all finished, what we're going to do is creating a blank, and then we're going to make the blank into a leaf. And then after that, that's when you create the hook. So I'm just going to start the process. All right. Now you see I only do two sides, and the reason why is because I want the metal to, when I come down on this way, when I do the leaf, I want the metal to flatten out this way, and that's why you do two sides. Sometimes it takes maybe a couple minutes, sometimes it takes 5 minutes, depending on the size of the piece and what you're heating. For this, it's probably a couple minutes, and then it's heated up, ready to roll. Cool. So now we're going to get into notching and tapering of the stem. So I have my two sides here like this. What I want to do is put a notch on this side. And what the notch does, it just shows me where this is the side that goes down to the anvil when I'm pounding out the leaf. So now I just want to start notching, tapering this down. When it starts usually getting to a dull red, you want to put it back in and heat it, because the colder it gets, the harder it is to work. So standard material for practicing on is usually 3/8 by 3/8 square. So what we're going to do in order to move the material faster, we're going to use the power hammer. Okay, so the next process of making the leaf, we're gonna shape the leaf. You see we created the blank for the leaf. Now it's about making it look like a leaf. So now what I'm gonna do is pull this out of the forge and then start to flatten it and shape the leaf into a leaf. So remember the notch that I had here that I put in? That always faces up. So the two angled sides that I put on here faces down. So when you go to hit the top of this leaf, it spreads out. That's one side. All right. Now get the other side fanned out here. As you see, I'm using the hammer, the edges of the hammer to help move the metal easier. There's a lot of times I'm not just hammering straight down. So one other thing with this getting thin, the anvil acts as a heat sink, as well as the thinner you get with the metal, the faster it cools. So your working time is a lot less. The heat's being drawn out of the metal, it's going straight into the anvil as fast as possible. Now that we got the shape of our leaf, we're gonna go into texturing. And then after that, it's gonna be called, we're gonna fold the leaf.
All right, aspiring metalheads, do you know what tool this is? Is it A, metal wedge, B, a flattening hammer, or C, a weighted mallet? The answer to that and a tour of one of Toledo Twisted Iron's most famous pieces, Echo, when we return to 419 by Design. What tool is this? If you guessed a flattening hammer, you're right.
Okay, so this tool I'm holding right here is called a flattening hammer. We actually made this flattening hammer. Blacksmiths use flattening hammers to help flatten out large sheets of metal the best they can, because sometimes when you start hammering on stuff, it tends to warp and do weird things, especially when you're heating. So that's what this comes into play for. So what you do is you basically put it down on the metal, and then you hit the top of this and it starts flattening out, all the rough spots in the metal. But yeah, sometimes you can buy these, and sometimes, or you could either make them like we do here. We make a lot of our own tools. So that's what a flattening hammer is. Echo is the old smokestacks from the Toledo skyline from the old Edison plant, which the Edison plant was it was designed by Daniel Burnham, he's a very big cityscape designer, really world famous. Echo came into play. ProMedica was tearing down the old smokestacks, and they were looking to want to reuse them into a sculpture. So they came to me. We did another project with them called Volo. So they came to me and they asked me. They said, "Hey, we're interested in possibly building a sculpture out of the old smokestacks. What do you think? And I said, sure, let's give this a shot. So we came up with some ideas and some concepts, and some of them were like small sculptures around the park, and some of them were just like just other little things, or maybe even just using little parts of the smokestacks and using brand new steel for the rest of them. And then I finally said, no, we need to make a statement for the city of Toledo. We need a Chicago bean for the city of Toledo. We need something that's going to be profound and really make a statement, So then we decided to go on that concept, and that's how we got to where we're at today, with this. One of the things that we were looking at while we were building it was we wanted to make it playful and interactive, and just something where it's fun, where people can just enjoy and want to take pictures around and just have a good time with. Okay, so the process in Echo, we had to sit down and kind of figure out how we're going to use this old material and make it look brand new again. And then also the other part of it was getting the stacks off the site. And then on top of that, we had to figure out how we're going to reinforce them to make sure they can stand like they are today, and especially on the angles that we're putting them on. It's like there's a lot of engineering that need to be involved. So I had to go through and kind of figure out how to strengthen these things, how to make it all work, and how to build the foundations. And it was a pretty interesting thing. So and then on top of that, the transportation, everything, and then just the overall design as well, as how are we going to design it to where it looks aesthetically pleasing, and then also tie in with the landscape the way it needs to tie in, because you have so many verticals and the straight lines all over the city here as the cityscape, and to break up those lines, how are we going to go about that? So that's why we kind of came up with this concept of almost like a giant slinky, if you will, but it's more like a Echo design. So that's why we made the rings elliptical, to kind of create that fun feel and create a dimension that is different from anything else in the landscape, but also it ties in with the landscape really nicely. There's been a few little hiccups here and there when we're developing the piece. One of the biggest challenges was trying to flip these things so we could weld on both sides, and work on both sides of these things. Because when we started working on them, we just put them up flat in the shop, and then we had to pull them out and flip them and then work on the other side. So I had to create these jigs to clamp on each side of these things and lift it up and flip it around every time we had to work on it. So as soon as they left the shop, they were painted, ready, and then they brought them over here, and we grabbed the crane and put them in place. The biggest part about Echo is the outside of the rings are the old smokestacks that set into the skyline for a long time. The sculpture being in place today is kind of just representing the present of where Toledo is going and how it's gonna resonate in the future. And the future part about this is just how Echo is going to inspire the future and make things grow in the city of Toledo. This is a paddleball project. That's a large-scale sculpture for City of Cleveland. What happened is I've done large-scale sculptures all around the city, and there's a company called Super Electric. They won a bid to design the sculpture, so they designed it, and then they wanted to build it out of steel, and they had to find somebody to build it. So they came to me knowing that I've built sculptures this size before, so they asked me to come here, and I came here and gave me the plans, and we made it happen. So first process was I had to figure out where I could get steel cut, especially on this size of one single plate, and then basically get all the major parts cut out, and then I got the pipe in, and then this pipe here, I had to send that out to a rolling company, and what they did is they basically bent the pipe for me in the shapes that I needed, because that's a half-inch wall on that pipe, so it's pretty thick, let alone being 4 inches in diameter. And then the ball up there is just I work with. We've done the fire pits downtown, and we got these big spheres, domes, if you will, and I went through the same company, and they had spheres just sitting around. So, and it's basically like a pressure vessel. It's got a cap for a pressure vessel that you put together, and that's what that's made out of. Yes, delivery to Cleveland. What we're gonna do is put it on a trailer, strap it down real good, nice and tight. Make sure this thing does not move, and yeah, ship it out to Cleveland. It's gonna sit right underneath some power lines, directly under power lines, and we only have 4 foot of clearance, so we can't use a crane. So we have to, again, I have to like figure out a way to get this thing installed with, in a unique way. And so now what we're gonna do is use a Gradall, which is a heavy duty forklift, major big forklift. And we're just gonna pick it up and stick it in place with the forklift. So that's how it's gonna happen.
To see the Cleveland installation of this giant paddleball project, check us out at bcanarts.com.
All right, so safety tip of the day is make sure when you're using your tongs, you grab tongs that are gonna be proper for your part. They're really gonna grip your part, because the last thing you want is your piece, when you're hitting it, flying up and hitting you in the face, or even burning you on your being, or even burning somebody else, because it could fly off and hit somebody else, and this stuff is instant. You don't have time to react. So make sure when you're working your parts, use proper tongs.
Welcome back. Let's return to this leaf hook project with Dane Turpeting from Toledo Twisted Iron.
So next process is we're going to texture the leaf, and blacksmiths use all sorts of different types of hammers for texturing. This right here is called a riveting hammer, but I'm going to use it to put the veins of the leaf into the veins into the leaf. But we also use flatteners, cross peens, ball peens, you name it. So anything to get like a really cool texture for the project you're working on. There's texture for your leaf. The other things that blacksmiths use to help form and shape metal is called Hardy tools. This right now is just like a V-wedge that I need in order to get the leaf to start folding the way I want it to fold. So basically this helps create a controlled fold that we need in order to bend the leaf over and fold it over properly. We've also used there's also holders that you can put in here that have like a spring holder, like a fuller was what they call it, spring fuller, and it'll hold down your parts so you can hammer on them if you don't have somebody else to hold it. So there's all sorts of different tools of what this Hardy hole can do for you. So now we're going to fold the leaf, and we're going to be using the Hardy tool, the wedge here, in order to fold the leaf properly so we can reopen it back up to make it look like a leaf. Right now I'm creating the vein for the leaf. So I'm hammering it down pretty hard, and then the next process is to open the leaf back up. So now we're in the process of opening the leaf back up. what we're going to use is a chisel here to like help get into the leaf so we can actually pry the leaf open and get the pry open. That's how it's pried open there. And back in one more heat and we should be able to pry it all the way open. Here we go. You always want to be careful when you're cutting, because what could happen, it'll shoot right off if you're not careful. Okay, now it's about turning this thing around. Okay, there's the hook. Now I'm going to twist it. So,
after Dane creates the hook part, it's time to put the twist in Toledo twisted iron.
Okay, straighten her out. Good to go there. So final process is to form the leaf out, kind of give it some character. So tighten that up there. And I'm using a pair of what they call scrolling pliers, which has no teeth on it, so you don't mar up your project when you're working on it. Sometimes you can give it a little double loop, or however you want to do it. Well, now let's go for a double loop. Give it a look, make it look cooler.